I'm going to ask, and I'm not sure who's going to answer this. How can serverless architecture be used to enhance the security of AI applications? And what are the key challenges to be aware of?
Shall I jump in to start this one?
Yeah.
So given that, I was thinking about this like long and hard for like 5 minutes before I was doing my talk earlier, and figured, well, why not ask ChatGPT and see what it says to that question? So the response we got was that serverless architecture can enhance the security of AI applications by allowing for more fine-grained access control, dynamic scaling, and less attack surface. The main challenges to be aware of include having to handle all of the security responsibilities yourself, ensuring the cloud provider is meeting security requirements, and properly managing your secrets and access keys. Which I actually think is, it's a pretty good answer to that. And a lot of that sort of stuff is common regardless of whether you're doing a serverless architecture or like a traditional application architecture. Things about how you're managing access control, what are the domain boundaries you're putting in there, security boundaries you're putting around those, like how you're doing key rotations for secrets and things like that. And I'm kind of interested to see how AI can help with this, because can it detect patterns in the way that your application is using those? Like, can it detect things like you've got a key that has been leaked because you accidentally did a git push and it was in there, or something to that manner, and can give you that insights? We're seeing some of that already through GitHub's tools, being able to discover some of that stuff. Is it truly AI? Probably not, but it's still helping you in that regards.
I'm going to throw that to Sarah.
So I actually agree with Aaron. So in fact, what I was talking about in my talk earlier, if you missed it, cloud security posture management, that's the kind of stuff that AI can really enhance. It looks through what you've built, what you've configured, and is like, hey, don't leave this key on the internet, that's silly, things like that. Because AI, we can't scale as people. We have to have some tooling to help us. So I think there's so much potential for AI to help security, but because we're going there, because I'm a security person, there's also so much potential for security for AI to to be used for ill and evil.
No one would ever do that.
No, because no one's using ChatGPT to write perfectly grammar and spelt and perfect English phishing emails. No.
That. Oh wow. Oh, business. No, don't do that. So
people already are. Just in case you were not aware of that.
It has been used for many. Has anyone here not familiar with ChatGPT, by the way? Are there anyone? Okay, good. So we're not completely just talking nonsense. Or we are. Wait, never mind. So I might just, I'm going to look at Akanksha for this one. So again, if you have questions, please just feel free to jump in, right? Someone's got to be first. Exactly. So speaking of serverless and AI, how do you see that intersecting? Like in terms of how do we keep innovating? Is AI part of that? Because serverless constantly, we have serverless days again, right? Because it's constantly new things. So where does that leave AI and serverless?
I mean, I'm one of those people, and probably by the talk that I did earlier, believe very much in not recreating the wheel. Like, there is no one out there, let me take that back. There's very few people out there who actually need to be building AI at a custom level, which is like extremely specific build, and like you go into the nitty-gritty and like actually build architecture for yourself and build out your data uses and everything are associated to it. Very few people need that. Most applications or everything you need is kind of going to be leveraging things that have already been built and are essentially already serverless and ready to go for you. So it's already there. It's going to get better. It's going to get a lot more use, and it's going to become a bigger use case outside of enterprise, I think, in the next couple of years, where people start seeing the use in real day-to-day usage.
Yeah.
And that's going to be where security really comes in. Like, it's scary. I mean, up until now, especially in an enterprise use, I go in and I build AI uses, but I usually chuck it over to people like Sarah, being like, hey, please make sure I'm not breaking the world by doing this and leaking everything as I'm going. And it's important that the two parts of it work together. But yeah, especially with all the black box stuff, we've talked about this, where it's scary what you don't know with serverless.
Yeah, that's the thing with, and again, my take, because as I said earlier, security can often be seen as the no people, the people who put a downer on things. But with something brand new, something that's relatively immature and in its infancy, the problem we have, because I'm going to try and explain this for anyone building AI, as a security person, I can't tell an enterprise, because usually enterprises come to us and they say, do you think this is reasonably secure, yes or no? And we will say, based on the following criteria, it's, good, bad, in the middle, whatever. The problem we have with AI right now, because it's so new and we don't have frameworks for assessing it, and because people are not talking about what their AI model does in the background because it's proprietary, is security don't know how it works, and people who are making AI models either can't or are unwilling to tell us how it works. And therefore, as a security person, it is impossible for me to tell you, is it secure? I don't know, because I don't know what it does in the back end. And I think, as time goes on, we will have to find ways to deal with this in a more constructive way. But currently, I've already been asked multiple times, particularly in the last month or two, what do you think about AI? And I'm like, it's got such great potential to help us from a security perspective. But as with any tool, anything you can use for good, you can use for bad. And yeah, in an enterprise perspective right now, if you gave me an AI model, I would just be like, I don't know if it's any good, because we just don't have that maturity in thinking in both AI and security. It's both of our problem to be able to express how something behaves and therefore is it secure. It's hard.
I was thinking just something you touched on there about the idea of security, and that it is such an unknown thing that this the machine learning model, or whatever we want to call it, has. Back when GitHub Copilot was first launched and people were first starting to experiment with that, and you'd be writing out some code and it would be doing a large scale autocomplete for you of here's what I am interpreting what you want to do, and I want to connect to a storage account, or I want to connect to a Twilio API or something like that. It's here is the credentials to doing that, and it's that looks like a valid key. And it might have been a valid key that someone had actually accidentally committed, and it just ended up in training data. And that's something that I think we need to be mindful of, is how much stuff we're putting in there that is appearing to be genuine, and at what point, if we are relying on security keys being generated for accessing our services, are our models going to get smart enough where they could generate something that is actually a key? And it doesn't realize it does, because it's just generating a random string based off of what it's seen that random string should look like. But then as someone who works for a cloud vendor, we've got to think about, how are we making sure that anything that we're putting out there as access credentials are cryptographically secure enough that you couldn't have an AI accidentally generate them for you? Because I think that's a really fascinating problem that no one is ready to properly deal with, and like I said, we saw that with GitHub Copilot initially.
Yeah. I don't know. For me, AI is scary and amazing. I don't know where it lies. Have we got any questions? Come on, people. Surely. Someone? Yeah? Pete, yep, down the front here. We're just getting the microphone. This is where we do the Jeopardy music. Ding, 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 ding. No, because we got to record the audio as well. So... Otherwise, I'm fine with shouting.
So, on the security and AI one, given that a lot of the fun with AI is around making inherent biases much worse, what are the fun inherent biases in security that we might see AI expose?
Ooh, good question.
Isn't that the $1 million question? I think... Well, as you have quite rightly said, we've already seen that AI has biases, and AI is basically a reflection of humans. We'll probably see, if I were to guess, make an educated guess, we will see AI make the same mistakes that humans make. Sometimes we see an alert as a false positive, or we think an alert's a false positive and it's actually a real attack. AI is going to make the same mistakes because it's just a reflection of people. And obviously it will get better as time goes on. But I think as well that it's so many unknowns because this sort of AI and security is so new. And the sad thing is, as with all things in security, we, the defenders, are always one step behind. We are generally always being quite responsive to the attackers. So as I was saying before, we've already seen ChatGPT used to write really good phishing emails that look more convincing than your typical phishing email. Someone also, there was a piece online, someone was showing that you could use ChatGPT to harvest credentials and harvest people's personal details. And so I think, your imagination is the limit for the things that probably AI can be misused for, to a point, without sounding like not so optimistic. We'll probably just have to, we can do what we can do, but to a point, like I said, we're always playing catch up with attackers finding new ways to do things. So part of it will be us responding to what interesting things they come up with. I know I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here, but it's going to be interesting. But I think AI will probably make the same sort of mistakes we do, and it's never going to be 100%, but for me, the real benefit of using AI in security is that it can help, although it won't fix. It's going to help like the skills gap we have and the lack of people we have, which is, inherent no matter what country you're in, Australia, the US, whatever. We don't have enough people to do security. Looking through, particularly, take security operations. You have someone who's looking at 10,000 alerts a day. Most of them will not be anything worthwhile looking at, and you get alert fatigue. It is it is a thing, and because human brains just get bored. And we're using AI, and as AI gets smarter, at least we can try and AI can deal with some of the boring stuff, and people can deal with the interesting stuff. That's kind of how I see it as a thing. Yeah. But it's going to make mistakes, like people do, and I think that's where we will just have to keep going and keep learning and get better, because I think that's all you can do.
I have this slightly positive spin on it, I think, because to your question, what's the bias? I have a 17-year-old who really loves hacking, essentially, not in a nefarious way necessarily, but figuring out what makes systems break. And I'm pretty sure that ChatGPT will make that much easier, right? So there'll be a lot more of these sort of low-hanging fruit kind of guessing passwords, whatever, because the code is so accessible. So I'm thinking, well, if that's going to be the norm, we're going to get really good at defending against those things because they're going to happen a lot more. Because I think something like ChatGPT or any kind of AI tool will go, well, I know about all these things because that's what I've read about or learned about. So here's something you can do. And then we start defending against those better. No?
You're very optimistic.
I am optimistic. Yeah. Look at my shoes. Jeepers.
Yeah. I agree with you. In an ideal world,
yes,
we already have a lot of tooling that can do that, but there's so many reasons. And look, all of you in here, if you work in IT, you know that it's not just about knowing what to do for the right thing. It can be budget, it can be time constraints. There's all kinds of reasons that things happen insecurely when people know better. So that's still a whole, I think AI, again, the more AI we use, I think we can make it easier, but still people are always the weakest link, sadly. And we can't get rid of us entirely. It would be a bad idea.
So that was a timid answer to your question.
Yeah. Sorry.
Anyone else? Anyone? Yep, there's one just over here, Pete. Just wait for the microphone.
Hi, yeah. So just thinking about the application of AI and all this tooling, right? I was wondering to what extent it's been, adaptive AI has been explored in its application of looking at individual habits, right? So the same way ChatGPT can predict text or can predict images or tone and all these things, it's based on the probability and it'll guess the next tokens. I imagine something similar could be done in terms of people's habits, coding habits, hygiene, right? I imagine that each person could have a profile. I mean, I'm sure there are security issues and privacy issues and stuff, but I imagine it could be applied at that individual level where it's assisting the individual to prevent human errors rather than just sort of looking at the picture and finding errors that have happened. Is that something that's being explored? Is that something that's being thought about?
So something I think that kind of fits into what you're talking about there is contextually aware tooling that involves AI. GitHub Copilot does this to a degree, but I've seen other tooling that does it slightly better, where it's aware of the application you're building. It's aware of the domain modeling that's in there, the types that you're using and all that kind of stuff. And as you're trying to write the code, it can give you suggestions on the things you want to build that are specific to the way your application is working, rather than like, here's a generic approach to solving said problem based off of what, like just thousands of lines of code that we've interpreted from wherever. But how does that apply to the actual problem that you're solving inside of your application? Now, it's not quite to what you're exploring as an idea there of like individual profile and stuff like that, but I guess more from a team dynamic. The application you're building, the application your team is doing, how are we looking at that specifically and bringing intelligence into building just that one?
The only thing I'd say to that, though, is like, to get to that level, you'll have a database somewhere with all that information in it. And that's where it gets, I mean, this is obviously coming from like a data perspective and like the AI building perspective of privacy and ethics and all the other parts, which are really, really grim. And we could spend, God, days talking about that. But when you start thinking about it, like how many people actually want exactly what they're doing every single day being recorded? Like, I mean, my phone does that to me every day. Like I walk to here and it records that. Terrifies me, but at the same time, I'm like, maybe I'll leave it on because I kind of want to be able to reflect and see what I did 10 years ago, which it does that, and it's scary because 10 years ago I didn't even know that was a thing that existed. But when you start putting that into an enterprise context, you start thinking about the data it's collecting. Granted, you're making an application, you're writing just functional code, but what else is that exposing into these AI models, and where else are they going? And then it starts coming back into, if it's something like ChatGPT, what else has it been reading, and how easily is that confidential information getting out there to other people? Which is one of the main things, I think, at the moment. Most of the big four, I think, have actually shut down ChatGPT internally, including a lot of other consulting places, because it's like, well, you can't put any of the client confidential data into ChatGPT to even write your meeting notes because you're exposing information immediately out there. I mean, I know ChatGPT is doing work to not actually expose that further on and build that into their models and stuff, but where do we draw that line of how we're collecting that data and what data we're collecting to be able to build to that stage? That would be, I think, before we even get to something that's usable, like how do you collect the right data? That's a lot harder of a question, I think, to answer.
And I think that really comes down to the ethics question around this of like, how, because it's building off the information you're giving it, what inherent biases do you build into it? Like, I obviously look at this more from like a programming tooling perspective than the other applications of it. But like, if I'm constantly just writing terrible code, it's just going to learn that, well, this is the way that you should write it. And if my code is continually terrible and it's just going to keep encouraging me to write continually terrible code, I'll end up spending 20 years as a software engineer like I'm currently doing. Like, I mean, I made a career out of it. I'm not saying you can't make a career out of writing terrible code, but like, is this the next evolution of an echo chamber? Your code's passing the build, it's, your tests are being successfully written and all that kind of stuff. It's like, great, but am I writing good code? Am I writing performant code? Am I writing secure code? Well, if all I'm giving you is the code that I've previously written, well, like, are you actually helping me, or are you just reinforcing what I believe? Are you telling me what I want to hear?
That's a good point. Yeah, are we going to make you an even worse coder? I'm not sure that's possible.
Just because you've been on my code bases.
Yeah, well, so I might want to just move the focus a little bit to future. We're sort of talking about that now, but I'm really kind of interested in what are some of the ways that you think we can use AI to, well, both improve security, but also as developers, maybe not have to think about it as much, because it's a hard thing, right, as developers, which I'm assuming a lot of people in here are software developers. We're always told, security must come first, right, and none of us do it. It's like, I'll comment out the test, right? Is other tools, it's true, don't look at me like that, jeepers. Other tools, or will there be tools that can help us with that and sort of maybe automate some of those things?
I think that would be in an ideal world, yes. So we do have tooling that kind of does that at the moment. It's like DAST or DAST, Dynamic Application Security Testing. And as you write code, if anyone's used any of these tools, it will actually sort of tell you if stuff is wrong.
Wait, it's already here?
Yeah, but it's probably not as... It could always be improved. All of this tooling can be improved.
Okay.
And I think with these more advanced AI models, it'll get smarter. So it's literally telling you as you go along. Now, if anyone's used those tooling, I've also heard from developers it can get very annoying because it's basically like someone on your shoulder going, no.
Yeah.
But as I was saying in my talk earlier, I wholeheartedly believe, and security has been very bad at this historically, that we just wag our fingers and say, you must be secure, but then we make it very hard for you to do the right thing. And doing the right thing should be the easiest way to do it. Otherwise, security has got it wrong for you, because if it's hard, people don't do it, or they try not to. So I think, with AI tooling, we should make, writing secure code really frictionless. I mean, it's still, I can't see a way around us having to have maybe a tool that's like, nudge, nudge, this is a bad way to write this. Maybe you don't hard code that key, things like that. But we should make it way, way, way less frictionless. So all you do is click, oh yeah, don't do that. And the AI is context aware enough that it will fix it for you. It's done, you move on, you keep going. That's what I would hope for. It's a journey. There's going to be a long ways to go because, as I said, it needs to be very context aware and smart, but given time, I don't see any reason we couldn't get there and have everyone do. Security is never 100%, but make doing the right thing the easy thing.
Yep.
That's what I want.
Sure. No, I appreciate that. Any questions? People, surely? There must be, yep. There's a snooker in the corner. Just wait for the microphone. Pete's on the way.
Sarah mentioned in your talk the sort of 3 pillars of security, and some of them are maybe less known, like availability is an odd one. And I'm wondering if with AI coming in, one thing it does very well is confidently tell lies. And
Yes.
I wonder if truth or accuracy of information is sort of a 4th pillar there. Like if you're transcribing a podcast, and it's putting words into someone's mouth that they didn't say, or it's writing a test, AI is writing a test for you that doesn't actually test what you think it's testing. Like, does this actually become a security concern?
It would do, actually. I would argue it would actually come under your integrity pillar, because we talk about, again, most people, when they think of security, think of the confidentiality pillar of security, because that's the one that most people immediately springs to mind. But integrity is about information not being changed, not being altered, and so what you put in storage and what you base business decisions off, whatever, hasn't been altered. And I think what you're saying there about AI and AI telling lies probably comes under that integrity. This is me just throwing it out there as Sarah's opinion. This is all new, but I believe it would come under the integrity piece, and it would be a security concern, because if your AI model is lying, and as you said, it can lie very convincingly, and then subsequently, and because essentially security is, and us security professionals like to forget this, but security is just a function of an organization to help it achieve its goals. And security is trying to make sure it can do those things. So if an organization is making business decisions or doing things based on information that has been tampered with or that is falsified, it definitely is a security concern. It comes under that integrity pillar. So yeah, and I have no doubt, sadly, that it will become an issue that security has to deal with, because, look, you name it, people abuse it in the big wide world.
Oh, yeah.
So...
Good question, though. It's
I mean,
this is very real right now, right?
I was going to say, like, a lot of these out-of-the-box solutions, it's really easy to forget the fact that you should probably check what the results coming back are. It's the same thing as ChatGPT telling me that I'm apparently really into Dutch stuff. I can't remember what you told me.
Clogs.
Apparently, I'm like, I looked myself up after that, and I was like, hey, write a bio for Akanksha Malik. And it was like this really bizarre, I'm like, I am not that advanced and well thought through. I'm like, no, that's not me. And no matter how many more add-ons I put in, like, oh, this specific, like the Microsoft one or the Melbourne one, it still kept giving me absolute lies. Like, I have never worked at Google. Like, I can tell you that now. I don't have 10 years of experience. Also lies. And I think people just forget to check. Even the things, I mean, I talk a lot about, like, hey, use these things that are fairly easy and accessible to use, with the caveat of, like, please at least understand what's happening, because at the other end of it, you're making it up as you go, and it's scary. At least when you're developing at an enterprise level, there are policies of, okay, well, we're going to do a dev, and then we're going to do the testing, and then we compare, and then we keep checking if there's data drift. Is how far away is it moving? And those policies, I think it just comes back to, as you're developing, making sure that those are really, really strict at the get-go of, like, hey, please check your data and your models on a weekly basis. And it's automated for you. ML ops exist. All of that is very, very automatable and doable to keep an eye out on it. Things like making sure that it's AI picking up the logs and stuff. Like, all of that really comes together. And yeah, just policies and good practices.
I think just because things like ChatGPT, these AI models, are so eloquent and lovely, we just get blown away and forget, that we should be checking its output.
It's a scam artist.
Yeah.
It's the exact same thing. If you look polished and you say good, fancy words, people will believe you. It's scary, but true.
Every advocate in the room is just like, I'm going to shrink down in my chair.
Like all of us on the panel, we're like, oh no.
We're very convincing, aren't we?
Yes. What?
I mean, Aaron looked up a lot of these questions on ChatGPT. I mean, we could all just be lying for all we know at this stage.
I recommend personally using ChatGPT as a therapist, because it always gives you such nice answers if you ask it therapy-type questions.
That's the advice of the day. That's brilliant. Yeah, no, I've had the exact same experiences. I just did a little course or a little thing on using ChatGPT to improve your PowerShell, of all things. And every single thing I got back, I'm like, I'm just going to test that now. Because, I just didn't believe any of it. It did, in this case, it did work. So, it does work sometimes. Anyone else want to ask? We have about 10 minutes left, roughly, before we, over there, sorry. Well done. Pete's running. Something like that.
Oh, Peter's just doing rounds now.
Yeah, no, Pete's getting his step count in today. All right.
Thanks. G'day, guys. So you touched at the very beginning of this conversation around the fact that people who are developing AI generally don't let you assess the security of the actual model behind the scenes. If that's the case, then isn't that the biggest risk for any large company like a bank or a healthcare place to take on, even the most basic of AI tools? But aren't they all doing it?
Yes and no. So this is, I think a lot of people want to. And there will definitely be big organizations out there that have started to take them on. But generally what I've seen is big enterprises are like, we'd kind of like to use this, but we're not sure it's a good idea. As we were saying, some of the big four consulting companies have sort of banned it. But of course we have, which is the other eternal battle in security, is shadow IT, where people just go and start using a thing. And of course, ChatGPT and other tools are just there on the internet. So things can end up in tooling anyway. No, it's a massive risk. And I think this explosion of the popularity in AI, definitely I know from talking to lots of people in industry that people are concerned about the use of these tools, because it's such a big black box at the moment, people don't even know how concerned to be. It's such an unknown quantity, like we don't know what we don't know. And it's all gonna come out in the wash as time goes on, because let's face it, bad things will happen, undoubtedly, and we will learn from mistakes, but I don't know what the right answer is, because, at the moment, a lot of the answers to the creators of these models are, well, it's proprietary, we can't tell you how it's doing things, which I do understand the whole IP proprietary thing, but we're going to have to find a language and a tooling and a framework to be able to articulate without giving away secrets in security terms, how an AI does things.
We managed to do that with, libraries in code, didn't we?
We will. It's just immature. It's just a maturity thing.
We'll get there eventually.
So the other end of it is like enterprises like banking and health, like they're so heavily regulated that, especially in health, like I've been on clients where you can't actually have AI, especially in banking, like you can't have any model running that you can't explain exactly what is being derived from where and stuff. So those black boxes aren't going to get used in that context, especially at the moment. And this is kind of where that ethics and actual law part comes in, which, I mean, people are freaking out now. Like people are fully like, how it's ChatGPT just exploded at such a quick level that it's become such a scary thing of, wait, what are the laws around this? How do we regulate the crap out of this? Like it's becoming a problem now, and how we deal with that regulation part will lead to a lot of different contexts.
That was going to be my next question, which is around a consortium of sorts that could effectively give the people who are building the AI the chance to at least prove that their technology is secure without giving away their IP.
Yeah, I think it's just a maturity piece. If we look at if we think back in the day when cloud was new and security people, because, traditionally security were like, if it's not in our data center, it is bad. It is so bad. And then cloud came along, and initially I know that a lot of security people were very resistant to cloud. They were like, oh, no, not in our data center, yuck, no, don't like it. And there are still pockets of that, though it's largely disappeared now, because people know that cloud is where it's at. Like, everyone's putting their stuff in cloud. So I just think it's just a maturity piece that will take some time, that we, people will find language and people will develop frameworks. So you may be aware of the Cloud Security Alliance. That was one of the first organizations. Again, it was a consortium of different vendors who were trying to make frameworks for assessing, was a cloud secure, and linking it to the traditional ways of assessing things. And I think we'll probably see the same thing with AI, but it's just so new. We just are not anywhere near being able to do it in a nice, slick way yet. So it's going to be a bit of a mishmash to begin with.
And I mean, in the meantime, there is this is a very Microsoft-heavy part of the world right now, but in the context of Microsoft, like they are trying to do things like explainability within models for the black box stuff. So any of their AutoML stuff, they do provide like, okay, well, these are the factors that we really took into place for the results that you're getting based on the data you provided us. This is what was the most prominent feature. And like, they are working on that responsible AI side of things. Is it enough? No, because it's still a black box and we don't know what the hell's going on. The scariest part is putting really, really solid power of models into people who have no idea what they're doing. Really great in terms of getting everyone involved, but also really terrible. It's the same context of putting a really fast functioning car into a 14-year-old hand. But like, off you go, drive down the road, enjoy that little trip. It's terrifying. That might end okay because he'll stop, but also will crash into the wall. Like, it can go either way. So they're getting there in the meantime where everything else starts kind of catching up a little bit to the rest of it, I think.
Yeah, and both my fellow panelists have touched on this, is that this is so new. AI, in the democratization of AI, has been happening over the last couple of years, but it has just exploded so fast in the last couple of months that it's going to take time for regulations to catch up and for people to sit down and work out what are the things to be properly freaked out about and what are the things that you're freaked out about but they're not actually as concerning as you might be. It was the same when cloud first came up, and we don't want to move to data centers there. But then finally, regulatory bodies caught up with that. They'd had some time to review them and understand them and see where nuances were and put out requirements that cloud vendors had to meet so that you could be confident that if I was moving my database from my on-premise data store to the cloud, that it was meeting the same regulations that I, as just the organization that owned that infrastructure, had to meet. I would anticipate that we're going to see that kind of stuff happening in the future. Yes, you're still not going to maybe know how the model was created and the internals of the way the model works, but at some point we have to manage societal trust, and we've got to be confident that the regulations that are put in place are good enough for us to be there. And again, maybe I'm being like an optimist like Lars here and having more faith than a government like should have placed on them, because that's clearly a dangerous thing, having seen the state of Australian politics the last couple of years at least. But at some point we have to accept that there are going to be regulations that will be there, and we have to hope that they are in the interest that we have as the organization, and that they are working in our best interests. And yeah, maybe we don't know what the internals look like, but that's okay, because we're confident that someone has understood how those internals work, and what I need to give it is going to leave my customers confident at the end of the day.
Fair enough. Okay, we are almost out of time, but I thought just here at the end, just give me a sentence on like your, he's looking up ChatGPT. What is like your favorite serverless kind of technology right now? You don't have to say servers or anything. I just want to drive this back to serverless days. Yeah? So, challenge. They didn't know this was coming.
Yeah, this wasn't on the set of questions that you sent us, Lars.
Yeah, exactly.
ChatGPT did not give me an answer to this. This is problematic.
ChatGPT doesn't have opinions. I know I've asked it for opinions.
Okay, well, I'll go first while everyone else is trying to formulate their question to ChatGPT first off. I think, based off of my talk, I think serverless functions are something that I'm super excited about. Like, I love the simplicity of that as a programming model and as an architecture pattern that you can just write. It's more than a sentence, isn't it?
Yeah.
I was about to tell her to shut up, but I've done that enough.
Azure functions, yeah.
All right.
I guess from the AI perspective, very much those kind of ready to go out of the box AI solutions, as much as I talk about how much they're terrifying, they are really useful in context of making lives easier and accessible. So those will probably be mine. I talk about them enough that I kind of have to use them, but with the caveat of please be careful.
All right.
And so, because it's like little Microsoft land down here, I'm going to go slightly differently though. And I don't know if this technically counts as serverless, but I'm going to put it in that bucket. I love logic apps because it doesn't run on a server. So
it is serverless.
Yeah, it is serverless, isn't it? I think it is. So I love logic apps because I come from an infrastructure background. I am not a big coder. No one wants me to write significant amounts of code for them, believe me. And it's lovely, it's GUI, you can look at the JSON, but you can do it in a nice interface, and it integrates really well with a lot of Azure-y things, and I'm a big fan. So that's me.
Cool.
Definitely more than one sentence, sorry.
Yeah.
Can I change my answers?
Nope.
Kubernetes.
Get out. All right, cool. Well, I was going to say cognitive services as well. That's sort of like, I've been playing a lot with those in the AI space. But that's it. That's all we got time for. We'll just get Chris up and ready, and then we got the 2 talks to go, but they're good ones. Well, one of them will be. No, they'll both be good. So thanks very much.